Debenhams will close its doors for the final time this evening, marking the end of its 243-year history on the high street. The department store chain, which employed more than 20,000 people before the pandemic, sold its brand and website to the online giant Boohoo back in January, but its high street shops are closing for good today. Let's speak to the retail analyst, Kate Hardcastle. Kate, thanks so much for talking to us this evening. It's quite a moment, isn't it?
It really is. When I started out my career, particularly in fast-moving consumer goods and retail, you just wouldn't imagine that a couple of decades later, we would be seeing the loss of this giant of the high street. It's been going for over 240 years, a real anchor tenant, which for me basically means the place that a lot of shops would base themselves around, or a reason that you would go to a certain destination or a shopping arcade because they were there. Teas and coffees with relatives in there, and had so many glory moments over the years as well, particularly designers of Debenhams in our generation, which was this idea of bringing together very many coveted designer names at an affordable rate for their customers. And it was such a success, such a magical piece of PR and marketing for so many years. So it is hard to understand why when you think about it from a consumer perspective, but when you understand the details of what was happening behind the scenes, and that with our very changing shopping ways, I think it does make sense, despite how sad it is.
What happened? How are we here today closing the doors on a store that's been around for 243 years?
It's a really great question. I think if I had to summarise as succinctly as possible, finance and commerciality. So finances. There had been quite a revolving door in the management teams at Debenhams. I'm sure a lot of people had gone in with the right ideas, the right strategy, but there was just a banking that retail was always going to stay the same. I think when the glory days were there in Debenhams, people took advantage in terms of being able to make investments for the long term and capitalising on the opportunity right here, right now, but didn't plan enough into the future and reinvest in the business enough to be able to face these uncertain times. Commerciality, I think it just lost its way. Debenhams does have very good brand awareness and certainly had a loyal customer. I know because they write to me, but that customer was starting to dwindle a little, and they've been enticed by other brands. And particularly Debenhams, when you think about it, is a very big store to run, a lot of costs involved with the department store. And when we've seen the rise of online shopping, these are probably not going to be the size of stores we expect to see on our high streets of the future. It's true to say that we will have a quality of retail offer in our high streets of the future, but maybe not the same quantity we've expected.
In some places, when you shut a huge department store like that, I'm thinking of Sheffield city centre, for example, there's not much left, is there?
And you're so right with that. They create almost what we call a shadow around the department store, that businesses there, maybe a little cafe or an independent store, would have used and been reliant on that footfall that Debenhams would have attracted to keep going. And that's quite a frightening, a daunting prospect for a lot of organisations, to think that their main business that was next door has gone to them. But if we actually look at the whole retail scenario, we've had John Lewis, who's a big chain of department stores, announcing store closure programs. Marks and Spencer's announced last year store closure programs. All of them have said that this has been speeded up due to the COVID scenario and the on and off lockdowns, but many re-strategizing to try and keep going for the future. So what I think is really interesting is this isn't just going to be a knock-on effect of the Debenhams effect. It's going to be the John Lewis, the Arcadia Group, all of these brands. And when we re-emerge into those high streets, there's going to be a short-term pain before we see this long-term evolution, because there's going to be a lot of empty spots, Anna.
Do you think it could be a positive thing that instead of just shops in these spaces, yes, as you said, a short-term pain, but in the future we're going to see more family entertainment, more places to go and eat out together, that it will, in the end, it could actually be positive?
I think it will be the catalyst for the change that we need. We need a human high street. It has to combine everything from residential to work opportunities. We've got to think about the huge amount of people that aren't going to be going back to the work office 9 to 5 as usual. And I think what these places will become are places we can congregate, be together, but we may be as likely to do a sporting activity as we are to shop. Is that a better outcome in the longer term? For me, absolutely. I want somewhere my family feels safe, we can enjoy green spaces, and we can feel like we can go and use that space to populise with other people. we're very human creatures. We like the connectivity. So I think you're right to say, yes, the catalyst could come, but I think we've got to be realistic. The hurt and pain the retail traditional high street is facing and has faced over the last 12 months is probably one of the darkest in the last 100 years of retail. So I think it's been a huge evolvement that's happened at a very, very quick and intensive pace.
What happens with towns and cities that have spent millions on redeveloping their city centres and now they just don't have the tenants to fill them?
I think if you did redevelop your town and city centre around retail, then particularly in recent years, you were probably banking on something that just wasn't going to be a scenario that was sustainable. If you look into the research, the movement to online was slow and steady, but it was happening ever so. But it isn't just about online shopping versus traditional bricks and mortar shopping. It's the fact that we might go out and want to buy into experiences more than the material goods. It's the fact that we don't all have the traditional life of getting a mortgage or renting a house and then filling that house with stuff anymore. People want to be freer to move. They don't want as many physical assets around them as they used to because they want to travel and do other things instead. There's just a change in pace in life. And what's happened in the last 12 months is we as individuals and humans, we've reconnected with things that matter to us. We've disconnected from other things. Perhaps we might have an excessive amount of clothes than we need, and we've decided we're not going to do that anymore. We've started to say to ourselves, we're going to fulfill these dreams and ambitions that we've got. This is going to be one of the biggest changing periods in terms of consumerism, what we buy, how we buy, that we've seen in a long time. And I think you have got the absolute pulse point there, that you have got to be, as a business owner, very understanding of that scenario to make sure that you can capitalise on it.
Okay, Kate, fantastic to talk to you. Thank you.
And you, thank you.
You're watching.